So I've managed to find 5 minutes break from listening to Life of a Showgirl to talk about TMUA 2025 very quickly. There isn't really, honestly, that much I want to say about this. If you want, last minute tips or places to go, things like that, I've talked about this in 2024 and 2023 videos. I can't be bothered to repeat myself. And also, there are other people who make videos online that give you some last minute advice as well. The only things I want to talk about on this board here, there was a lot of chatter after the 2024 papers online about, and there continues to be, about how difficult those papers were, like just how hard they were, so difficult, hardest thing anyone had ever written, an enormous jump over any other TMUA papers that ever been written. And rest assured, if you're taking the 2025 papers, that every single year that I've had a significant TMUA following and people have talked about the papers straight afterwards, every single year, which is 2022, 23, and 2024, every year people have written online immediately after the papers happened about just how much harder those papers were than any previous year. Right, 2022 was one that I remember really well. There was an enormous amount of chat online about how the 2022 papers were just so hard, and particularly I think it was paper one. I think was so hard, the hardest thing ever, and completely unfair. And you're probably sitting here, having done the 2022 paper in preparation for this, thinking, well, I don't remember that being difficult at all, like any more difficult than any other paper. I think it's fair to say that there's been a gradual increase in the difficulty of TMUA papers, which makes a lot of sense because as more papers get written and there are more papers for you to do in preparation, people go into the exams more prepared, and so therefore they have to be written a little bit harder to compensate for that. But there has never been, and there I feel pretty confident in saying there will never be a huge jump in difficulty from one year to the next. People just like to go online and complain about how hard papers were because, and apologies if you did the 2024 papers or any other year and you were one of these people, people go online to complain about them because the papers did not go as well as they were hoping, and finding excuses and blaming other people like the question writers is easier than just facing up to the fact that it didn't go as well as you were hoping because you were overly stressed or for whatever other reason you just lost your cool and the whole thing just didn't go as well as you wanted it to. Um, so just don't worry about it, right? It's going to be fine. It's going to be just like all the others. Be aware that that same thing might happen to you, though, right? Like, because this paper matters, like, to a lot of people for things that you want to do in the future. You're going to feel more stressed about this when you're doing it because it matters, right? You're going to feel more stressed than right when you do papers at home. Um, you need to try and keep your cool. You need to try and move on from one question to the next. You need to stop thinking about a question as soon as you've done it. You need to think about the question you're actually doing, and you need to stop thinking about how much the whole thing matters and how um, and stuff, because you just need to focus on the maths, right? And you need to trust that the question writers are going to write a reasonable paper that is pretty similar to all the other papers because that's their job, and because writing one that is significantly harder achieves absolutely nothing. So you just need to trust that the questions are doable and that you can do them and you've prepared well for it, which I hope that you have. And so you'll be able to do it, right? So don't go in there overly concerned about this being ridiculously hard. I mean, it's TMUA, so it's going to be quite hard because that's the whole point of it. But don't go in there concerned that it's going to be amazingly difficult because it's just going to be fine as long as you keep your cool head and do it like you've been doing the papers at home. The two things that may or may not be true. I mean, TMUA are incredibly untransparent in how they actually run this, but it seems like the questions could be in a random order, and it seems like questions could be different to other people who are also taking it. Um, like it doesn't seem like there's just 20 set questions that everyone gets. It seems perhaps like there are more questions and you just get given some of them, and those come in a different order. These might all be like anti-cheating methods, which makes a lot of sense, but we don't really know. But just bear in mind, like it's possible that the 3 or 4 hardest questions that could possibly appear will appear to you question one, two, three, and four, right? And you need to keep a cool head through that. You need to understand that, okay, in the 2022 papers, question one was always an easy one. That might not happen to you, right? The easiest question in the entire set might be your question 20, if this indeed is how this works. So you need to make sure you look at every question. You, like I said before, you move on from a question after you've done it. You don't continue to think about it because that just wastes time and space in your brain when you should be thinking about the question you're doing. And you always need to be thinking about all the methods that you've learned while preparing for this all the time, right? Always keep that have sort of checklists in your mind of, oh, have I considered this method? Have I considered this? How did, that guy on YouTube I watched do these papers? How did he think about a question that was a bit like this, right? Always keep a cool head. Always go back to the start. Think about your strategies and your checklists for going through questions, and yeah, keep a cool head. And please don't go online afterwards and complain about the fact that the paper was the hardest thing that anyone's ever written and so much harder than anything else, because that doesn't achieve anything other than make the next cohort more stressed, which is not helpful to them either. So yeah, good luck with it, and yeah, I'm going to go back to Life of a Showgirl now.